What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in today's video, I'm going to be going through 10 fantasy football hot takes for the 2024 season. So over the last few days, I have posted my positional rankings, my overall rankings, and before I jumped into my week one content, I just wanted to throw a fun video out there, going through some hot takes, kind of planting some flags this fantasy football season, both on certain positions, and then also just some player-specific hot takes. So if you guys enjoyed the video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Let me know your thoughts down below. Any questions, would love to hear them. We'll make sure to get back to you. And if you guys want to drop your own fantasy football hot takes in the comment section, I would love to hear them. So let me know down below. But let's dive right into my first hot take. And if you guys have been watching the channel, you know it's no secret that I really like this rookie wide receiver class, especially in redraft. And so my first hot take is that we are going to get 3 rookie wide receivers to finish in the top 15 at the position. I think this is a very unique rookie class where you had a very strong group of prospects. It was a deep wide receiver class, but also the majority of these guys received fun landing spots. So it wasn't just talented players going to like hopeless situations. You had talented players that were also landing in solid spots, good offenses, solid quarterback play. And so I think when we're looking at the wide receivers who could hit this top 15 number, the first one we have to talk about here is obviously Marvin Harrison Jr. I think he has the best shot of finishing in the top 15. Obviously a great prospect, got great draft capital, but also has a really strong landing spot with the Cardinals. So I have him ranked, I believe, as my wide receiver 9. I'm predicting, straight up he finishes in the top 15. So Marv would be the first guy I'd be looking at here. Then Malik Neighbors is also someone who I think has top 15 upside. I know a lot of people aren't super in on him because the landing spot is definitely not great. Giants offense being paired with Daniel Jones, but I do think the talent could just win out here. One guy that I keep talking about as like a rookie year comparison would be a Jalen Waddle, where Jalen Waddle's rookie season, like this Dolphins passing attack was not good. They just threw him a ton of volume. He wasn't, overly efficient. He wasn't ripping off big plays every week, but the volume carried him to like that, high-end wide receiver 2 season. So I think that's definitely in the cards for Malik Neighbors. And then I think there are just multiple other players that in like peak seasons, peak outcomes could be top 15 options for fantasy. You have a lot of guys who could be wide receiver 1s on good offenses with good quarterback play. I think Xavier Worthy's in that mix, Brian Thomas Jr., Keon Coleman, Ladd McConkey. You could also just have like a boom from this Bears offense, and you have like DJ Moore and Rome Odunze both as top 15 options. So I think it's definitely bold to say that 3 of these dudes could be top 15, but I feel like if it were to happen in any specific year, this is a good one for it just based on the depth of talent and then also some of the elite landing spots that these guys did receive. So that's my first hot take. The second one is also going to be like a positional hot take, and I think we are going to see at least 5 tight ends average 14 plus PPR points per game. We have not seen this happen since 2016, and I actually wouldn't be shocked if it didn't happen at all since then. So 2016, we had a huge boom at the tight end position. I think we could see that again here in 2024. And I think heading into this season, it's unique because we don't have like one clear elite high upside tight end. Like in previous seasons, you normally had at least one tight end locked into the first round or 2. Recently that has been Travis Kelce, also Gronk when he was in his prime, but we don't really have that this year. Like maybe Kelce Laporta, like sneak in at the back end of round 2, but I don't think either of those dudes are like guaranteed 16, 17, 18 plus points per game, which is kind of what you've been expecting from the tight end one in recent years. But I think there is a really strong amount of depth at the top of the tight end position. We saw Kelce and Sam Laporta both hit 14 plus points per game last year. Not crazy to see them, repeat that production in 2024. Once Trey McBride became a full-time starter, he averaged 15 PPR points per game to close out the season. If you remove Mark Andrews' final regular season game, he would have been at 14 plus. Then you have guys like Dalton Kincaid, who could take a year 2 leap, potential number 1 weapon for Josh Allen. You have Kyle Pitts, who's proven he's talented, finally has the quarterback play. If Brandon Ayuk gets traded, I think we could see that 14 plus point per game upside for George Kittle. And then you have a guy like Brock Bowers, who, maybe the offense doesn't look great, but maybe Devontae Adams goes down. Maybe Devontae Adams gets traded, and you just have Bowers, performing like an absolute stud right out of the gates. And then you have other options. Like I think David Njoku is talented enough in the right situation. Maybe Jameis Winston at quarterback, if Deshaun Watson goes down, where he could hit that number. You have a guy like Jake Ferguson, who I think could get there through a big touchdown season. So I think a lot of these guys are in the mix to have solid upside this year. So I think we could see at least 5 of these dudes hit that 14 plus PPR point per game number. And then the third hot take is going to be my last positional one. And it is going to be that 10 quarterbacks will average 20 or more points per game using 4 point per passing touchdown. And this has only happened once in the last 10 years. That was 2020. Just like I talked about with the tight ends, it might be the only time this has happened, having, 10 or more tight ends with 20 plus points per game. I just think the quarterback position has so much depth this season. The consensus top 4 with Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, I think we're all expecting those guys to be 20 plus point per game options. I would throw Richardson in there as long as he can stay healthy with the rushing upside on this offense. I think he's a 20 plus point per game guy. I think CJ Stroud could definitely get there, in a leap in year 2, more passing volume, better weapons. Kyler's already done it twice, so he's definitely in the mix. Burrow and Dak have also hit 20 plus point per game seasons. Jordan Love could take a leap in year 2 as the starter. You have rookies like Caleb Williams. He has the weapons. Jaden Daniels has the legs to get there as rookie quarterbacks. And then there are just so many depth options who, in boom years, big touchdown seasons, could also get there. Brock Purdy, Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence, Jared Goff, Tua, Kirk Cousins, Stafford, Rodgers, Fields, if he takes over as the starter, early on in the season. So I do think there are a lot of these quarterbacks up there that could give you 20 plus. And I just think this is going to be a really deep year at the quarterback position. Now, starting to get into some of the player-specific hot takes, my fourth one here is going to be that Achane finishes as a top 3 running back. If I had to make a list of my guys heading into this fantasy football season, Achane would probably be the number 1 dude. Some are fading him because of Raheem Mostert. Others are fading him because of his size. He's not, the workhorse back who's 5'10" to 6 foot, 220 plus pounds. That's not Achane, and I'm not expecting him to be that. But I want to go all in on the dude who, as a rookie, was the running back 5 in points per game on a sub 50% opportunity share. Do you guys understand how difficult that is to put up 17 plus points per game, 20 plus points per game when he was the starter, or the games where he was healthy, on less than 50% of the offense? That is insane. I understand he's 100% an outlier. He is not the prototypical workhorse, but he is a dream fit in the Mike McDaniel offense. We know the efficiency is going to be there. He's bound to regress, negatively in terms of his yards per carry because it was just insane last season, but he's still going to be one of the most efficient running backs in the NFL. The touchdown upside is going to be there. Even without him, pounding it in on goal line, he still scored 11 touchdowns in 11 games last season. He has a ton of big play upside, and I also think there's room to grow in the receiving department. So like I mentioned, he averaged over 20 points per game in his healthy matchups. I think a league-winning 22 plus point per game season is definitely in the cards. I have him ranked as high as my running back 5, which is definitely much higher than consensus. So I'm going to be very invested in him this season, and I definitely think he could be a top 3 running back. Now, my next player, hot take is going to be that Kyler Murray finishes as a top 3 fantasy quarterback. I think he is my favorite value at the quarterback position this year. In 2020 and 2021, Kyler was the quarterback 3 and the quarterback 4 in points per game. This is the best group of weapons he's had, in his entire NFL career, paired with Marvin Harrison Jr., Trey McBride, who absolutely broke out once Kyler Murray, took over last year, coming off the torn ACL. He is now a full season removed from having that torn ACL, which means the rushing upside should be better this year. He's already flashed some really strong rushing upside. So I feel like he just checks all the boxes for a high upside fantasy quarterback, and I do think top 3 is in his range of outcomes. My hot take number 6 is going to be that Jonathan Brooks is a top 10 running back in the last half of the season, the last 8 games. I think a lot of people are going to be fading him because he is going to be missing the first 4 games of this season at least, recovering from his torn ACL. And I think it's clear the Panthers are slow rolling him. They probably know they're not going to be Super Bowl contenders this year. So you draft a running back in round 2. You probably don't want to, just give him this monster workload right off a torn ACL. It doesn't make a ton of sense. So I think they're definitely playing the long game here. But it'll be about 11 months removed from the torn ACL if he's able to come back in week 5. And then you're expecting some sort of ramp up period, week 6, week 7, week 8, easing him into the offense. I don't think they're just going to dump the RB1 role on him right away. But I really do think he can be a league winner with Dave Canales as the head coach. Dave Canales came into the Bucs last year as the offensive coordinator. He wildly outperformed expectations. He also fed Rachaad White as a workhorse. We're heading into the season. Rachaad White was like this dead zone back, kind of like an ambiguous situation. Dave Canales just absolutely force-fed him. I think Jonathan Brooks is a better player than Rachaad White. He is a talented round 2 pick. He has 3-down skill set. And if I am going to bet on someone coming off a torn ACL, like the first year back, it would be someone who's a good athlete and someone who is young. Jonathan Brooks checks both of those boxes. So I think he's going to be someone you do want on your team late in the season. So I think he's a top 10 running back to end the year, the second half. Now, my 7th prediction is just going to be, I guess, throwing some darts on some rookies outperforming the veteran options. So I think Brian Thomas Jr. is going to outproduce Christian Kirk, and I think Rome Odunze is going to outproduce Keenan Allen. I know a lot of people are kind of like married to these veterans. They've given you the production. Christian Kirk was solid last year. Keenan Allen was an absolute monster last season. But I think it's time for the young blood to come in and kind of take over and outperform these guys. So you have Christian Kirk, who it looks like he is not going to be in 2 wide receiver sets. That is going to be Brian Thomas Jr., and it is going to be Gabe Davis. This is something we saw last season in the preseason, and it carried into week 1 where Christian Kirk completely flopped. But Zay Jones got injured in week 2, so Zay Jones was out of the picture. Christian Kirk then stepped into those 2 wide receiver sets. If that did not happen and Zay Jones stayed healthy, I think Christian Kirk would have had a much different 2023 season. I think Brian Thomas Jr. is a great fit with Trevor Lawrence. I think he's going to be their wide receiver 1, so I do think he is the better pick over Christian Kirk. And then with Rome Odunze over Keenan Allen, you look at Keenan Allen, he's getting up there in age, 32 years old. This is a new situation. He's not extended beyond this season. The Bears just invested, elite draft capital in Rome Odunze. He's a great prospect, and I do just think it's only a matter of time before he overtakes Keenan Allen on this depth chart. Now, my 8th hot take is going to be that Justin Fields starts more than half of these Steelers games, and I think in the games he starts, he is going to average over 20 points per game. So they came out, they named Russell Wilson as the week 1 starter, but I definitely don't think this is like some sort of, secure starting spot here. Russell Wilson is pretty far removed from his prime at this point. The Steelers' offensive line really struggled in the preseason. Russ is really limited at this point in his career when he has to, work out of structure. The mobility is not there. It's like he still tries to be mobile, tries to do what he had in his prime, but it just does not go well. I think Fields, will get a shot to start at some point in this season, and I think he at least has enough upside, enough mobility where he might be able to retain the job. And I also feel like you go into the season, you start Russ, like with Russ's like veteran status, if you pull him, like that might just be wraps. Like I feel like if he's done, it might just be rolling with Fields for the rest of the season and like figuring out what you have with him. Unless Fields completely like self-destructs, I think he'll be able to maintain it. He has the rushing ceiling. Not a lot of guys can match that. He hit a 20-plus point per game season in 2022. So I think he'll get his shot. And I think fantasy-wise, he'll be a solid option. Not saying he's going to be some world beater for the Steelers. Not saying he's going to like lead them to the playoffs or anything. But fantasy-wise and being like just fine enough to keep the job, I feel like he can get that done. Now, my hot take number 9 is going to be that Greg Dulcich and Ben Sinnott are top 10 tight ends over the second half of the season. So these are guys that in most leagues are going undrafted. Some of you may have not even heard these dudes' names, but they are 2 of my favorite younger tight end options. Greg Dulcich was a rookie in 2022, and he was pretty impressive. He missed the first 5 games of the season, so it's tough for a rookie to come in, produce after not getting that time in the preseason training camp, missing the early part of the season. He scored double-digit PPR points in 5 of his 10 games, and that was on a really, really bad Broncos offense. And he did it while only scoring 2 touchdowns. So it's not like he was, going 2 for 20 with a touchdown and hitting 10 PPR points per game. He was racking up some solid yardage games. He really worked his way into this offense. The problem with Greg Dulcich is that hamstring strains have just been an absolute killer for him. That's why he missed the first 5 games of his rookie year. It is what ended his rookie season, I think 2 games early. And it's also what led to him only playing 2 games last year. So that is a massive concern. We hear about the hamstrings with Christian Watson. It is as bad or even worse for Greg Dulcich here. But the talent is there. If he can stay healthy, this group does not have a ton of weapons with the Broncos. I think he has like number 2 target upside within this Broncos offense. And, you have Sean Payton there. Bo Nix has looked really good in preseason. Maybe there's a little bit of upside there also. And then we look at Ben Sinnott. His profile has a lot of similarities to Sam Laporta, where they're both good athletes, both were round 2 picks, both had solid college production, and we know Sam Laporta went out, absolutely balled out in year 1. Now expecting, Sinnott to come anywhere close to that is very unrealistic, It's not the same type of offense, but I think early in the season, Sinnott might be buried behind or splitting reps with Zach Ertz. But we saw a similar thing last year with Trey McBride, where McBride was pretty much irrelevant. He ends up overtaking Zach Ertz, and then he comes out and is like a 15 PPR point per game guy. So behind Terry McLaurin, there's not a clear number 2 weapon. Maybe Sinnott steps up and is a nice tight end option to close out the season. And then my final hot take number 10, it is going to be that Trevor Lawrence and Justin Herbert both finish as top 10 tight ends. If you're punting the quarterback position, you're not going after like Burrow, Dak, Love, you're getting past like Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels. Trevor Lawrence and Justin Herbert are like 2 of my favorite later round targets. Lawrence is being drafted as the quarterback 16. Herbert's being drafted as the quarterback 17. And starting off here with Trevor Lawrence, it seems like he's been somewhat disappointing for fantasy, but he's still been the quarterback 12 and the quarterback 13 in points per game over the past 2 seasons. I like the weapons he has: Brian Thomas Jr., Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, Travis Etienne, Gabe Davis. That's a solid unit. He has a decent rushing floor, and I don't even think he's come close to his passing production ceiling. And then for Justin Herbert, this bet is not all that complicated. I just think he is very, very good at football, and he has been very, very good for fantasy. As a rookie, he averaged 22.2 points per game. Everyone knows how amazing CJ Stroud was last year. CJ Stroud averaged 18.4 points per game. So Herbert outproduced him as a rookie by nearly 4 points per game. He was the quarterback 2 in points per game in his second season. He was the quarterback 7 in points per game last year, despite losing Mike Williams early on in the season, and also played through a fractured finger. So the weapons are like undeniably not good this year. You've got like Ladd McConkey, Joshua Palmer, but I just think he's good enough, can play his way into the top 10. And I also think he has a little bit of untapped rushing upside. Like Justin Herbert is a great athlete. His tendency is just not to take off and run. Like rushing is a lot more tendency based than it is just pure athleticism. But I think, near the goal line, they could get him involved a little bit more. I just think there are ways where Justin Herbert's ability can carry him to a top 10 fantasy season. So that is going to wrap it up for my 10 hot takes this year. Let me know your thoughts. Like I said at the top, if you want to drop your own, I would love to hear them. But thank you all for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one.